Hello there, thank you for staying with us and welcome to another edition of Channels Beam. I'm Victor Matthias. Now, mixed reactions have trailed the decision by Nigeria's two main political parties to set the price of nomination forms for various elective offices at amounts seemingly beyond the reach of young people. Now, the PDP set its presidential ticket at 40 million naira and the APC at 100 million naira. This is coming after the passage of the Not Too Young to Run bill, which reduced the age candidates must attain to vie for elective offices. Today on the program, we will look at both sides of the divide, as some have frowned at the situation, claiming it will disenfranchise the youth, while others believe such is needed to ensure only the serious-minded come forward so as to keep the process less cumbersome. But before we get into all of that discussion, let's first of all take a look at what made the trends in the past week.
Nigerians on Saturday woke up to the news of the death of Oba Lamidi Adeyemi III, the traditional ruler of the ancient Oyo Kingdom, and wasted no time to share their grief over the death of the monarch. The Alaafin, who died at the age of 83, was one of Nigeria's top traditional rulers and is considered to be the longest to have sat on the Oyo Kingdom throne, reigning for over 5 decades. Oba Adeyemi, who hails from the Aloolodu ruling house, is reported to have died on Friday night at the Afe Babalola University Teaching Hospital, Ado-Ekiti. He has been buried according to Islamic rites.
Well, may the soul of the late monarch rest in peace, and of course, our heart goes out to the family as well as the people of Oyo State. But joining us to look at today's topic, we have with us right here in the Lagos studio, Seun Awugbenle. It's a pleasure to have you today on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We also have Ahmed Mustafa joining us via Zoom from Oshogbo in Osun State. Ahmed, it's a pleasure as well to have you on the show today.
The pleasure is mine, Victor.
Of course. Having me. Oh, sure. Well, kickstart the conversation for us, Ahmed. So much has been said about this, the amount that has been, set by political parties for those seeking elective offices, those aspiring actually, to elective office. But there's just been so much conversation around that. But what was your own reaction when you heard about the prices that were set, when the parties did?
Well, initially, I was of the opinion that the prices could have been set a little lower than what they were set at, because considering that the APC sold its presidential nomination form in 2015 for roughly about 25 million, and that same form now is going for 100 million. That's a 75 million naira increase. It wasn't something that I was particularly pleased about. But then, after careful consideration, maybe I kind of understood or understand why the party chose that route. In your introduction of this topic, you did mention that some people have the opinion that it was necessary to bring some sort of sanity to the entire process. I've seen a lot of people say that move is engineered to disadvantage young people from contesting for elective offices. But I beg to disagree, simply because the APC, in its magnanimity, did say that anybody below the age of between the age of 40 and below who is eligible to contest would be eligible to pay only 50% of the cost of nomination form for whatever position they're running for. So, for instance, if you're running for president in the APC and you're 40 years old and below, you would have to sum of 50 million, and that 100 million naira would not be applicable to you at that point. So I think that's a genuine show of consideration for young people, and it then strengthens the conversation that says that this was not done to disadvantage youth, but to bring some sort of sanity into the entire process. It eliminates the possibility of the process being ridiculed by absolute jokers and pretenders who just want to occupy the new spaces for popularity's sake. So, if you're bringing something worthwhile, then you know that, okay, so this is why I'm doing this. It's not business as usual anymore. If the funds were set at, say, 5 million, a lot of people would be able to part with 5 million without even, and they know that they stand no chance whatsoever of emerging as the flag bearers of the party. It will just become a charade of an exercise at the end of the day. So,
all right. So
eventually, when I saw this.
Yeah, I was going to say that some people are saying that based on the current economic situation in the country, that even the 50 million for the position of president is somewhat steep. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. But then sometimes when you have opinions, it's good to listen to counter opinions. And like I told you at the start of this conversation, I was of the opinion that it was true. In conversing with a lot of people, superior arguments were brought forward to say that if you are running for president, Nigeria has a population of 200 million people. If you're running for president to rule those 200 million people, it should not be out of place for you to, if the forms are set at 100 million, which the APC said the forms are, if you have 1,000 people who believe in your ability to be president, and those 1,000 people bring forth 100,000 naira each, you would have your 100 million naira for the purchase of your form. If you can gather that as a young person, then it tells us that you are indeed serious and you have what it takes to vie for the highest office in the land. So I don't think that if you're vying for president, that that cost should be a concern for you. And I'll say the reasons why. Because when the elections proper come, there will be a lot of expenses.
So I was gonna actually come to when because after parting with that money for the nomination and expression of interest forms, if you eventually win and become the party's candidates, before you even win, there's another round of spending, and then when you win and obtain the party's go ahead, now the candidacy now, that's another round of spending. I was going to go into that, but just hold there for a bit. Let me quickly get to hear from Seun Aregbile, who is here in the studio with us. Seun, he says it's not a problem. But I don't know what you think. What are your thoughts on this?
Decision by the ruling All Progressive Congress to set 100 million for his presidential nomination form. It is everything bad. From all sides, that you might want to look at it, it is completely bad. The optics is bad. And I consider it personally, I consider it immoral, it is pervasive, it is insensitive, it is reckless. And it does not, perhaps it does not even factor the current mood of the country. For the records, this 100 million naira that's currently being charged by the APC for its presidential nomination form is 122% higher than what it charged in 2018, which was for 45 million. And it is 270% higher than what it charged in 2014, about 27 million. Now, when you put that side by side with what you currently have with other big political parties, the SDP and the PDP, it is 3 times higher than what the SDP is charging at 35 million naira. It is 2.5 times higher than what the PDP is charging at 40 million naira. If that is high, I still consider that high. But I am concerned because there are at least 4 major factors here. 1 is the commodification of the process. 2 is exclusion, right? Having to erect a sky-high barrier, as the case may be in this situation. 3, we're actually talking about what you are likely to describe as insensitivity, right? Because you are fixing 100 million naira for a presidential nomination form that does not even guarantee you.
But people below 40 and below can pay half of that.
Oh no! At this point, we're actually talking about raising. We're talking about eliminating disparities and barriers. Why erect, a major barrier? And my point is that for any age whatsoever, 100 million naira is a lot of money. 50 million naira is still a lot of money because, again, what is the national minimum wage? National minimum wage is about 30,000 naira. So you are saying that if you put people on a 30,000 naira minimum wage, what is it going to cost people? You see, having to use money as the first gauge in an electoral process is completely immoral, and it defeats the purpose of service and leadership. Now, people have to spend 100 million naira just to get just to get nomination from. We haven't even talked about the amount that they're going to spend when it comes to party primaries, right? And then eventually they get into public office and they have spent billions. It betrays the essence of it then betrays the essence of service because people want to recoup back their investment. We're talking about getting to a point where politics is not about ideas, it's about ideals, right? Having to put this as a major barrier, stands in that way, and it is pervasive, right? We are talking about, for a long time we've been talking about a prebendal culture, a culture that continues to support corruption. So we're saying, no, we want to do away with that. We want to do away with that culture. And the ruling party that has enough goodwill at this time, it is completely tone deaf. And a complete lack of awareness. That's the point. A complete lack of awareness and hubris to think that, from nowhere you then come and you fix 100 million naira for presidential nomination form. So what then are you saying that is so you're saying it is the most important, differentiation for you? And that should never be. It is not the kind of society we want to build.
Yeah. So I mean, in as much as they have already done that, people believe that, like you're talking about now, ideals. Value, leadership, and all of that. People believe that if you have someone who represents all of these things that you mentioned, people can come around together and crowdfund and say, okay, you're a young person, you have the competence, you have the character, you have the ability, you have the leadership. Ideally, you have all of those. You check all of those boxes, and they crowdfund for you.
Why people that are crowdfund?
Well,
the people who are poor. I mean, more than 40% of this country's population are in poverty. That's why I say it is devoid of optics. And it is a complete lack of self-awareness. More than 40% of this country's population are poor.
What happens to the 60%? The 60%.
And these are people that are living, well below poverty average. Even the people, do we still have, as a matter of fact, do we even have a middle class in this country? So my point is that based on all indices of poverty, absolute poverty, relative poverty, dollar per day poverty, food poverty, our people are poor on all sides. We're talking about food inflation. Almost everything is expensive, and I'm sure you can attest to that. Everybody knows that things are expensive. People can hardly afford to eat. And I keep saying you have a population that is essentially living on the edge of survival, and it's a dangerous place to have your population. And in the midst of all that is going on, I mean, killings here in the north and in the south, rising cost of governance, and then you fix 100 million naira as presidential nomination for. I think it is disappointing.
Let me get Ahmed back into the conversation. Ahmed, Shewan is of the opinion that as things stand right now, the money set by these parties, your party, the APC, the PDP, and everybody, is a tad too high, and he just doesn't see reason why that should be. But just before I held you back the other time, you were trying to give me some reasons as to why you believed, even though earlier on you shared his opinion, but after some things were brought to the fore, your opinion kind of changed. So if you could shed more light on that, please.
Okay, thank you, Victor. I've been aching to come into this conversation. So I want to ask Shew, how much does he think that it will cost to prosecute a presidential election? If you become the candidate of your party, how much in actual terms would it cost you to prosecute an election in this country? I think we're being a whole lot we're applying a lot of cosmetics on the current situation of Nigeria. Yes, if you say it appears insensitive, it is the APC is tone deaf, blah, 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 blah. I will ask, if you become the presidential candidate of the SDP or the APC or the PDP, and you genuinely want to stand a chance to win an election in this country, what will your budget for prosecuting that election be? If out of that budget, if you are realistic with your budget, now put 100 million and tell me what percentage of that budget the 100 million comes to. That's how you then know if setting 100 million as your nomination form cost is insensitive or not. Because at the end of the day, if you're looking at 40% of this country being poor, I'm not sure about that statistic, but I'm not even going to go into that. If you are in a position where you can raise 100 million from whichever source, whether from crowdfunding or from friends or from your personal cause, how in the end are you going to be able to generate the money that you need, the finances that you need to prosecute the general election? You're going to have to go to 36 states of this country, including the FCT, to campaign. You're going to have to logistic cost, publicity cost, advertisement, mobility, transportation. All of that are going to come into it. So at the end of the day, how much are you going to budget? So if you look at the overall cost of running a presidential election, then do the percentages and tell me if you still think that it is insensitive to set the budget, the cost of nomination forms at 100 million. We've got to be balanced when we're having conversation and not just get it's easy to get emotional. But I can tell you, if you're going to run a state election, a gubernatorial election in Nigeria, at the very least, it will cost you, if you're being factual, it will cost you at least 2 billion to successfully prosecute a state election in Nigeria. We clamor about it all the time, how this cost is expensive, how our democracy is expensive. Yes, but these are the current realities of the country, and it's not going to change overnight. If the APC sets its form, or the PDP sets its form at 25,000.
Ahmed, we lost you. Ahmed, we lost you there for a bit. But while you try to reconnect and get your internet in place, I would hold you there and then take a quick break. And of course, when we come back, we'll continue this discussion. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We still have with us our panelists in the Lagos studio as well as via Zoom. But if you're just joining us, you're watching Channels Beam on Channels Television, and we're looking at the cost of nominations and expression of interest forms set by the political parties in the country. But just before we went on break, Mohammed Mustafa was trying to paint a bigger picture of what it takes, beyond the cost of the form in itself, but looking at the bigger picture of the primaries and also the elections, be it state or even the federal, on a federal level. So Ahmed, you were trying to make a point while we lost you there for a bit, and then we had to take a quick break. So you were talking about prosecuting an election, based on a federal level. Before, if you could conclude your thoughts on that.
Yes, Victor. What I was saying basically is this. If you take into consideration what it's going to cost you to run a general election in Nigeria, a presidential election, the total cost of prosecuting that election, if the APC or the PDP set their forms today at 25,000 naira, is that going to have any significant difference on the cost of running campaigns in the 36 states of the country? Is it going to have any significant difference on the cost of bringing delegates from the 36 states to Eagle Square on the day set by the different political parties for their presidential primaries? Is that going to have any effect on the cost of TV, radio, and social media advert and jingles that these candidates are going to have to pay for? Is it going to reduce the cost of billboards, handbills, and all of that? The cost of hotels, feeding, all sorts of logistics are going to have to incur over the next 10 months in prosecuting the election. Will this cost of forms, if it was set as low as would Shehu, for instance, would love it to be, what significant difference would it make in the overall picture of things? For instance, if you set the forms at 25,000, and that means that the elections are going to cost significantly less, then I'll be all for it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. The PDP is setting his form at 40 million. The person who becomes the PDP candidate might eventually spend more than the person who becomes the APC candidate who had set his form at 100 million. So at the end of the day, these things make very little, if any, difference at all. What we're supposed to be attacking, reducing the cost of our democracy form, should not even be about the nomination forms, because it's not even where the real money is being spent at the end of the day.
All right, so let me
100 million.
Let me hold you there. I mean, you've posed pretty much a lot of questions, and let Seun answer those questions, because I mean I don't have the answers to those questions. Seun, I mean, he's asked so many questions there, and I saw you were kind of nodding your head and putting some things down. But so how do you react? How do you answer all of those questions?
Okay, so Ahmed is a member of the All Progressive Congress, so I understand. But his mindset is unfortunate and disappointing.
No. I think we shouldn't go that way. No, just let's stick with the issues.
My point is that we're actually at a point where we are saying that we want to demonetize the electoral process.
Is there a law to that? Is there a law?
No, it doesn't have to be a law.
Okay.
In demonetizing the process, right? You are able to attract the brightest and the best people to get into office. Now, if money has to be a major barrier, I mean, there'll be a lot of people who have ideas. They have the programs, they know what to do, but they cannot come on because essentially you have placed 100 million naira as, a fee. Now, this is as simple as commodifying the entire process. It says, they are going to use the money for supporting the party, for running. But my point is that there are alternative means to actually raising funds for the party. Have they actually tried having every member of the party pay 1,000 naira, for example, you say you have about 45 million naira, 45 million members of the APC in the country. Do you know what, everybody paying 1,000 naira would actually do for the party? You wouldn't have to overburden people, people who are coming. Because my point, I am still trying to dwell on the fact that politics and public service should be about service. Encumbrances like 100 million naira nomination form defeats the purpose, because essentially you are setting the politics up for enterprise. You don't want businessmen coming into politics, people who go and get a loan to prosecute election, and the first thing they want to do is to get the money back. So it will be completely unfortunate, and it takes away completely from the orientation of public service. So my point is that the less encumbrance you put in the way of, now let me give you this point. Whoever becomes president, President Muhammadu Buhari, from what I understand, and you can check, annually should be earning 14 million naira annually. That is what is entitled to the president. So you are saying that a salary of 14 million naira, and you already put 100 million as nomination form. So the candidate ends up paying 1 billion. Is it even possible for the candidate to, in good conscience, make back that money within 4 years? So we are saying demonetize this process. You are going to make 14 million. If you become president today, what you are entitled to do 14 million naira annually. Yeah. Well, there are allowances, but my point is that you make 14 million naira annually. Let's even say you make 100 million, including all other allowances. You make 100 million naira as what you are entitled to annually. This is about 400 million by the time you are done. You're still, perhaps you spend about $1 billion, you're still unable to make back this money. So
your point is we should demonetize the process.
Demonetize the process so that the brightest and the best people, people of good conscience, people of values, people of character can come into the process. Putting 100 million naira sky-high barrier such as this completely defeats the essence of leadership, the essence of politics, and the essence of public service.
Let me get Ahmed's last words before we go. Ahmed, he believes lastly that in all of this, the money should not be a major focus. It shouldn't. It's actually a barrier to not only young people but also to people who have the brains, the ideas, and all of that. But what are your closing remarks? Do you share that view with him?
Yes, I completely agree that we need to demonetize the process, 100%. What I'm saying is this. Sheon has given an example. The president earns 14 million naira a year, and if you buy a nomination form for 100 million, there's no way you're going to make back that 14 million naira, that 100 million naira at the end of your 4-year term.
4 years.
That's not the point, because if you put that into consideration, then nobody should be president all over the world. The American president has had to spend millions of dollars to get into the office of president, and he's not going to earn that money back. Nor is the president of Uganda or the president of Zimbabwe or the president of or the chancellor of Germany, for instance. So at the end of the day, what we're saying is that money doesn't have to come from you. If you have the goodwill of the people, those people should come forth and willingly donate to get you into office, and it should not be about you self-funding yourself. And let's not get it wrong. I completely agree with Sheon that we need to demonetize the process. What I'm saying is this, in essence, that demonetizing the process is not about bringing down the cost of nomination forms. That's not the point to start, because that's not where the real money is being spent. The real money is being spent on delegates at the primary levels, and then on electorate on the day of elections. That's where we really need to focus our energy on. It's like we have cancer and we're treating acne. That's what it is with all of the hula baloo that's been going on about the cost of nomination forms. Because I've said it again, and I'll repeat it, that this 100 million, if you put it vis-a-vis how much people are going to have to spend to run for president in this country, no matter how frugal you are, I'm asking, how much is your budget for presidency? There is no way you're not spending billions to run election in this country for president, no matter how frugal you are. So if you consider 100 million to maybe 5, 10, 15 billion, it's still a very insignificant part of the entire cost.
The larger picture.
Democracy. It shouldn't start from nomination forms. That's my point.
All right, I'll have to hold you there and say thank you, for joining us on the program today and sharing your thoughts. Ahmed Mustafa, you joined us from Oshogbo in Osun State. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Victor.
Of course. I'm sure enough to say thank you as well to you for joining us today on the program. And sharing your thoughts on this. Sheon Arogbile, thank you as well for joining us on the program.
A pleasure.
Well, that's the show today. Thank you so very much for watching. We'll also keep following this and see how it turns out at the tail end. But that's why we have to wrap it up. I'm Victor Matthias, and we will leave you with the movie videos on our YouTube channel in the past week.
President of Nigeria.
If you give me the mandate on the 28th and 29th of May 2022 for me to fly the flag of the party in the 2023 election, I will come back to vote this week.
It is followed in forth by how sympathizers thronged the palace of the Alaafin of Oyo after his death was announced. Up next in third is 34 governorship aspirants in Benue State endorsing the Speaker of the State House of Assembly as the next governor of the state. In second is former President Goodluck Jonathan speaking to his supporters shortly after a rally in support of his presidential ambition.
Yes, we are calling me to come and declare for the next election. I cannot tell you I'm declaring. The political process is ongoing. Just watch out.
While the most viewed video in the past week is that of the police inviting parties involved in the Christian school scandal for questioning.